So you have to make good choices. Then that's why then you have to, then the next thing is that, as Dr. Hong said, you have to have good design. And then you have to practice. Okay? If you are not an experienced speaker, practice becomes important. Now for me, I have taught many years, and then talking has become the second nature of myself. So I don't have to practice very much at all. And that's how you can conduct a good talk. Okay, so I will tell you a few important things about good content, how do you go from the content, good contents to good talk. Okay, so that you can tell a good story. Now, the first conceptual thing you have to realize that the burden is on you as a speaker. Some years ago, here is another story. I'm using storyline. Okay, some years ago, I overheard a conversation between a super-sized scientist or superstar scientist in Taiwan. And the superstar scientist was invited to give a talk to the high school students. And then after the talk, and during the dinner time, and he was asking the other organizers, okay, how did my seminar go? How did my talk go? And then the organizer hesitate a little bit, but then said, well, the high school students said that they could not understand your talk. And guess what this super scientist, to make it simple, said? He said, oh, that's okay. My science is just so difficult. So if they cannot understand, that's fine. So what is your response of this? Is that what I call the collective waste of time? If you think your stuff cannot be understood, you should not accept the invitation. You went there and you don't care. Nobody understands. What's the point? Okay? So he forgot that the burden is on him to try to make it understandable to the audience. So that's concept number one you should remember as a speaker. The burden is on you. You have to do a lot of work, try to make it understandable, accessible to the audience. So how do you do that? Number one rule is that you should know your audience. I know the audience very, very well here today. When I was invited to give a talk, the first thing I ask is, what would be the composition of my audience? Then I would redesign my talk every single time. Believe it or not, I was talking to Dr. Hong and he was laughing about it. I once was invited to a Taiwanese temple, 寺庙, to give a talk on molecular biology. And I have to speak in Taiwanese. 我愛講台語，規場演講都愛講台語。Okay? I was very reluctant, but finally I agreed, and then I practiced a lot. And I was so surprised by the end of my talk. Then people begin to raise their hands to ask me, 阿公阿嬷阿伯阿姆. They raise their hands. They begin to ask me questions. I feel very good about it. Honestly, I feel really, really good about it. I knew my audience. I prepared for that. Okay? Rule number two, make it easy. So many people, young people especially, try to make the talk very complicated as possible, because you want to demonstrate how good you are. That was a great mistake. The purpose of giving the talk is to communicate, rather than make it totally inaccessible that no one understands. That failed the entire purpose. So you have to know your audience, make it easy. I'll come back to address these things. Then show only relevant data. Be selective. Don't cover everything. Perspective. Okay? And then give, at the very end of the talk, make sure you give a take-home message. Clear take-home message, a big picture. So that people can retain in their mind, at least for the next 24 hours, hopefully, about what you have said. Now, you think about your own experience a little bit. How many times you went to a seminar or went to a talk? As soon as you walk out from that room, then you begin to say, what did he say? A lot of times that happened. And then you go up, then you took the elevator, you go up to the stairs. And who is that guy? Okay? So that clearly tell you that this guy didn't do a very good job, all right? Now, so let's deal with the first issue. The burden is on you. Now, because when you are a speaker, you are the one who knows this stuff best. No one is knowing that stuff better than you. So you should have the confidence. Just like I'm giving this talk, I have a lot of confidence. Like I always told my graduate students and postdocs, say, when you step onto the podium, stare at the audience, demonstrate your confidence. Train yourself to do that. When you begin to speak in this way, and then, oh, it's maybe and that, you invite attacks, questioning, challenges. So that is something you have to prepare yourself mentally, because you are number one. And because it's your job to give a good talk. Okay? The audience try to follow you. You have to lead the audience. Lead them. You are the leader. So you have to share the burden. Now you can, of course, you can confuse the hell out of everyone, right? How many times, please reflect. Just please reflect in your education in college. How many times your professor confused the hell out of you? A lot, to me, at least myself. Most of the professors are unable to teach well. I have one time have a professor, he was a very nice guy. He always started out saying, okay, class, today we're going to talk about mitochondria. And then he went on to talk about mitochondria a little bit. And then, oh, I'm sorry, before I talk about mitochondria, I have to talk about membrane. And then he went on to for 2 more things. Oh, well, I'm sorry, because before I can talk about membrane, I have to talk about the lipid. And before I talk about the lipid, I have to talk about this couple bond and double bond. And at the very end, he forgot what he wanted to say. Okay? So you didn't really confuse the hell out of us. All the other kind is that will bore you to death. A lot of speakers really bore you to death. You fall asleep right away. Okay? And so my conclusion is that you should never blame your audience. If the audience fell asleep, that's your problem. Speaker's problem, not the audience problem. All right? Now, so there are several levels of communication. And then I hope you can achieve at least some good level. Okay, number one is something confusing and absolutely hopeless. Okay, so that you don't want to do it. Second, there will be some pockets of confusion. Okay, still not very good. Okay, third one, it's clear. Now we went to a class. Okay, then the professor kind of went through the textbook, give this figure and that. Everything was clear, but then you sit there and you kind of go, all right, okay, should I learn this? Do I have to really learn that? So that's not very, very attractive. You want to hopefully achieve at this level, clear and interesting. Make it interesting. And then so the student, the audience want to say, hey, yes, I want to learn more about this. And then the highest level, that is very hard to achieve, that's inspirational. Okay, and then provide a big picture, broad picture, perceptive and perspective, etc. That's the best. You have to train yourself a lot harder to reach that level. All right, so let me back up to the rule number one, know your audience. So there are several different levels of audience. Okay, as I said, I gave a talk in Temple, so that's the general public. Okay, I have a mixed audience, so I have to try to design something better than that. Then I can normally convey. And then I give talks many times in high school. Some of you may have given talks to high school. You know you have to redesign your slide, the way that you speak as well. Some of them went to talk to college kids. Many of us eventually would actually teach in college and give to college kids. And so that's a different level. Graduate student, that's where we are. People who are specialized. They know the material much better. Or specialists. The specialists are the people who, like you met in conference. That require little introduction. They can get into it right away. So you have to design your talk in different ways. But the fundamental conceptual principle is the following. In order to communicate well, there's only good way that you can do it is to switch role. Do a role switching. Imagine yourself as one in the audience, wow, how would the audience expect from me? If I'm sitting there, can I understand myself? When you think through these things, then you know how to design your talk better. Okay? So put yourself in the audience shoes. Imagine you're just like them. So with that, I would give you an example. How I would start with the talk, and then say I can imagine myself, and imagine myself dealing with different audience. So here is just an example. The science behind it is not important, just an example. So my laboratory was working with dynamic remodeling of spliceosome. Spliceosome is a very complicated machine that continues to be remodeled, changes, etc. So how can I deliver this concept? When I met the high schooler, this is how it started. I said, imagine spliceosome is like a Rubik's Cube. And there will be enzymes, just like these two hands, continuing to remodel the Rubik's Cube until the active site, the catalytic center, is formed. I will stop at there, not going any deeper than that. So then if I have to give a talk to the college students, I was starting with something like that. I said, spliceosome is perhaps the largest known cellular machine that contains more than 300 parts. And the spliceosome is very dynamic, and it's continuing to have proteins coming in, protein leaving in such a following way. So when the precursor messenger RNA become available, and spliceosome begin to build on it, or there will be tons of protein coming in and tons of other protein going out. That deliver a different level of understanding. Now, if I speak to the graduate student or specialist, and I will give a different type of design. Okay? So I would say, okay, when splicing is a very complicated process is executed by spliceosome, and spliceosome is built anew on the precursor messenger RNA with exon, two exons flanking the intron. And the process is complicated. Starting with the green ball, that first I have to recognize the 5' splice site called U1. And then with the red ball, yellow ball, that I have to recognize the branch site. And then followed by some trace nerve that will join it. And then eventually then things will begin to leave and then go and they form the active spliceosome. As I emphasized, the science here is not important. It's just an example. You have a different audience. You design your slide differently. And then that would be just about right to give them enough information so that they can understand. Now, rule number 2, make it easy to follow. Make it easy. Now, how do you make your seminar easy? Number 1 is to have a crystal clear introduction. The introduction is very important. If people fail to understand your introduction, they probably get lost. So you need to have a very good introduction. And then I developed a rule based on my years and years of experience of teaching and giving seminar. That is, you should allocate about 1/4 of your seminar time as introduction time. 1/4. So if you have to give 40 minutes, you need to have 10 minutes. Somewhere around 10 minutes to give the introduction. And then in the introduction, what do you have to put into the introduction? You should explain, in this field, what has happened historically, okay? And where are we right now? How much we know about the issue that you should deliver very clearly to the audience. And second, then you have to include in your introduction, what are the critical questions? What are the critical questions that I want to ask that remain unaddressed? Make it very clear. And then the point is that you want to tell the audience in the first 5-10 minutes. So you should stay here because what I'm going to tell you is important. So remember this 1/4 rule. If you have 40 minutes, spend somewhere around 10 minutes, give a nice introduction so everyone can understand your talk later. Okay, so here I'm going to give you an example. How I cover, it's sort of like an introduction example. How I talk about my own science. Now, the important thing is you have to realize that science is not important here. This is just an example.